Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today we are talking about one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, Tim Allen's The Santa Claus.
And the magic.
Seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing.
Tim Allen.
Santa?
The Santa Claus.
Divorced dad Scott Calvin has his son over for Christmas Eve. After the two go to bed, they hear something on the roof and go to see what it is. Scott accidentally knocks Santa off the roof, puts the Santa suit on, and is told shortly after that he's now the new Santa. Scott initially thinks this was all a dream, but as he begins to change over the next several months, he realizes he's got a lot of work to do. The Santa Claus has always been one of my favorite Christmas movies ever since I was a little kid. It holds a special place in my heart. I've seen this film, I lost count how many times. Ever since I've been a little kid, it's pretty much been a staple for my Christmas every single year. And this was the movie that when I was a little kid, I lived in an apartment with my mom and dad and little brother. And at the time, we didn't have a chimney. And so apparently when I was younger, I had asked my parents, I was like, well, how does Santa Claus get to our house because we don't have a chimney? This was the film that they used to explain that, because where he magically makes the chimneys appear in the film. And so, and I can already hear some of you guys watching this video probably going, your parents referenced a film where Santa Claus dies? And hey man, the 90s, it was a wild time. But yeah, so I have a lot of love for this film. I know it's definitely not perfect. It's got its plot holes and stuff like that, but it holds a special place in my heart. And I wanted to talk about it where it's the 30th anniversary of the movie, which goddamn makes me feel really, really old. So the movie starts off, you get introduced to Scott Calvin, and he's not a likable guy at least to start off the film with. I mean, for Christ's sakes, his own son doesn't want to spend Christmas Eve with him. So that says a lot right there. But, I mean, he's Tim Allen, so he just has this likability factor about him. Back in the 90s, Tim Allen, he was just everywhere. He was doing Home Improvement. He had the Santa Claus series of films. He also had Toy Story. The guy was just everywhere. So he just had this likability that even though he's kind of an asshole, you still kind of like him in a way. And can I just say, the Drifters' White Christmas has to be one of my favorite Christmas songs of all time. Between here and also being used in Home Alone, it just instantly gets me into that Christmas mood. So yeah, just that classic song. I loved how it's used here in the opening of the film. And so later, when Scott and Charlie, they end up getting home on Christmas Eve, Scott ends up reading Charlie the night before Christmas. They go to bed, and then sure enough, they hear something on the roof, and so they both go outside, and Santa Claus is out there. Now, Scott goes out there in his underwear, and he yells at him, scares him off the roof, and Santa Claus dies. Yep, sorry kids, Santa Claus is dead. Apparently there was, I've read or heard things about that there was a darker version of the script originally where apparently Scott was to kill Santa Claus with a shotgun, and Disney was like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. That might be a little bit too far for us, even in the 90s. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if any of you guys watching this, if you know that's for a fact, but I've heard that over the years, and I mean, it is messed up, but honestly, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me, because some of the stuff that we had in 90s Christmas movies was pretty wild. And so afterwards, Charlie convinces his dad to put on the suit, they deliver some presents, and then they go to the North Pole for the first time. And this has to be one of my favorite parts of the movie. There's just this magical feel to it, seeing Santa's workshop, all the elves, the music that's playing. It just really captures the spirit of Christmas for me. And you also get introduced to the lead elf, Bernard, who I think is awesome. One of my favorite characters in the series. And then as Christmas wraps up, Scott and Charlie, they go back home. Charlie, he ends up telling his mom and Neil that he went to the North Pole with his dad, and that his dad is the new Santa Claus. And of course, naturally, them hearing that from their kids, they question Scott. They're like, what have you been telling Charlie, or what did you guys do on Christmas Eve? And that's kind of the rest of the movie from there. So Charlie keeps wanting to tell people that his dad is Santa Claus because he thinks it's the coolest job out there. But naturally, Scott isn't too excited about that. He kind of wants to deny everything and just thinks that it was all, a dream. But as the movie goes on, weird things start happening to him. Every time he goes to shave, he basically grows a full beard back almost instantly. He can walk down the street, and just by looking at people, he can tell if they're naughty or if they're nice. And he gains a lot of weight really fast as well. And Charlie's mom and Neil, they don't think that maybe spending time with his dad is necessarily the best thing, because as they see it, they think that Scott is just trying to do all these different things, change his physical appearance just to appease his son, make him think that he's cool. And so they kind of work on getting him taken away from his dad, which kind of leads to, the sadder part of the movie. But there is one scene that I've always found hilarious in the film, and it's the scene where Scott goes to the meeting for his job, and there's a guy pitching the total tank there, and I just love Scott's reaction. Isn't that a pretty picture? Santa rolling down the block in a Panzer. Well, I hope you've been good this year, kids, because Santa just took out the Piercing home. Incoming!
Well, kids, I certainly hope you've been good this year, because it looks like Santa just took out the Pearson home. Incoming!
The facial expressions, how he delivers that line, the sarcasm, it cracks me up every single time. And I've seen this film, like I said, how many times throughout the years. And it's just one of those scenes, too, that me and my dad, I lost him a couple months ago, and it's one of those things that we always used to have this thing with movies that we both watched, growing up when I was younger, that a lot of those films we would revisit. I would pull up clips on YouTube and we would watch them and just laugh at different things, and that was one of those specific scenes. And so watching this film again this year, it hits a little bit differently for sure, but it's good memories because I loved watching those films with with my parents and my family growing up, and this is one of those movies for sure. And Tim Allen is really iconic as the role of Santa Claus to me. He starts off the film, he's kind of an ass like I mentioned, but as the movie goes on, he really starts to embrace the role and responsibilities of Santa Claus. And as I had mentioned to you guys, the comedy throughout this film, I think it's hilarious. There isn't a line that I could think of off the top of my head where the line didn't land for me. And I've seen this movie how many times throughout, my lifetime. And he's so iconic, for me growing up. I'm sure for a lot of other kids too growing up in the 90s. When you think of Santa Claus, you think of Tim Allen. The guy, he's had an amazing career, but this is probably one of his more iconic roles for me, at least. And I also love the banter, the relationship that he has back and forth with Neil, played by Judge Reinhold. Just their chemistry in this film and throughout the whole franchise is hilarious. He's a psychiatrist. He gives him a lot of shit for that. But Neil also likes to wear ugly Christmas sweaters. He doesn't think they're ugly, and so Scott gives him also a lot of shit for that as well. And so I just really love the relationship between those two characters. And even though this film is a little zany, like I said, I mean, this movie starts off and Santa Claus ends up dying. But even though it has its kind of its zany, crazy moments throughout the film, it also does have a number of heartwarming moments as well. One of them, for example, is when Charlie has to remind his dad who he is as Santa Claus. And then Charlie's mom and Neil realizing, finally accepting that he is Santa Claus. Definitely one of the more heartwarming moments in the film, but they got a number of them throughout here. And for a film that is now 30 years old, which I can't believe, I think it holds up incredibly well. Like I had mentioned, it is one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. I have to watch this movie every single year. It's not Christmas if I don't watch it, and I usually have to watch it multiple times. So it holds a special place in my heart. I know it's not perfect, but it is a personal classic for me. But I'm curious, what your guys' thoughts are on the Santa Claus. I love the original film. I even love part 2. And 3 has kind of grown on me over the years. I know it's kind of got shit on a little bit when it first came out. I don't know what people's feelings are on it now, but I've seen it so many times on Freeform and the different channels like that I actually I've grown to like it a little bit more. So I don't know if you guys kind of feel the same way, and maybe I'll do a review for part 2 and part 3 at some point. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are about the Santa Claus down below in the comments. And what is your guys' favorite Christmas movie, or just a movie that you have to watch every Christmas, or it's just not Christmas for you? So let me know down below in the comments. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat. Hope you guys are having a great holiday season, and Merry Christmas.